Here's Heron.
Okay, we're live whenever you guys are ready.
Okay, we'll let Heron take his seat. We're waiting for you, Heron.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Trying to wish my grandson a happy birthday, but he never picked up. So. Sorry to be late.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to North Logan Planning Commission on March 16th. We're going to excuse Nan and Heather. The rest of us are here. And so Teresa, because we got folks absent, you'll be a full voting member tonight with us. So welcome, and we'll start off tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance by Kenny.
Yep.
Good with that?
I'm good.
Heron, a prayer? Right on. Thanks.
All right. Please repeat the pledge of allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, as a group of citizens of North Logan City, we gather together tonight in this planning commission meeting and ask thee to have thy spirit with us to guide us as we discuss the items on our agenda. We're grateful for this city. We're grateful for the leaders and ask you to bless them. And we pray that as we discuss tonight, that thy will be done. We might be able to come to an agreement and that we might further the well-being of this city. May we do thy will, we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda that we have presented for tonight.
I so move.
And Heron Hoyt second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I don't believe there's any minutes from previous meetings, so we'll go on to follow up on issues from previous meetings. Scott.
Okay, Commissioners, we have two follow-up items. As you'll recall, we had a conditional use permit for a detached accessory dwelling unit come before us back early February. That decision was denied by the Planning Commission based on a finding that the commission believed the structure was larger than the code allowed. That decision was appealed to our administrative appeals hearing officer, who reviewed that in a appeal hearing back on March 8th, Wednesday. The appeals hearing officer, in their review of that decision, they sent back a written decision indicating that they didn't have enough substantive facts and findings from the Planning Commission to provide a substantial review. So they are remanding that decision back to the Planning Commission for additional discussion, and we will look at that likely next month. So just on your radar, we'll have more information coming back to you, as well as some training to help us wrap our heads around what is being asked of the Planning Commission. So that was one item. An additional item, also an appeal item, the Wilson-Strebel subdivision. It was a post-division approval that was denied by the Planning Commission based on the fact that 2500 North was too narrow. This was about a year ago or so. That decision was also appealed. It's making its way through the district court and appeals court. And recently, the district court upheld our administrative appeal hearing officer's decision on that, basically saying that our hearing officer did not make an arbitrary, capricious, or illegal decision when reviewing that appeal. So at the moment, it's been upheld. We'll see where it goes from there, but wanted to provide you an update on that particular land use decision from about a year ago.
Scott, with the detached ADU appeal hearing, do we need to
when we do review this again, whatever the decision that's made by the commission that time, do we need to document a notice of decision differently than we did previously?
We likely will. So we're going to have to be very specific about how we interpreted the code that we used in our decision. And provide a more concise written decision. It was clear that the appeals hearing officer did not want to rely only on the minutes as proof of your discussion and your findings and your facts. He wanted to be very clear. We'll have to have a little bit more discussion on what format that takes, and we'll be getting with our legal counsel to give us some guidance to make sure we have best practices and we understand what is expected of us as a planning commission for that additional discussion. So more to come on that. More information will come your way. We'll have more discussions, but it will be coming back to the planning commission to add more detail into the record.
Sounds good.
Okay. That's the only other follow-up issue on past items.
Okay, great. Well, let's move into our regular commission business. First item on the agenda is a public hearing for ZTA 2022-04. And we've talked about this in previous meeting or two. This is a city initiated zoning text amendment to the subdivision and development standards for the residential estate 5-acre zone RE5. The proposal modifies various standards for the RE5 zone, including the base density calculation methodology under the density determinant subdivision option, as well as the lot dimension and setback standards. Additionally, the proposal makes various modifications to multiple sections of the land use and zoning code intended to add clarity, resolve duplications, and correct inconsistencies. So Scott, if you want to give us an introduction, and then we'll go into the public hearing.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so as you had indicated, this is a city initiated zoning text amendment. What that basically means is we are taking a look at our code and proposing some adjustments to the language in the code going forward. Now, this type of action from the Planning Commission is a legislative action where you're creating new policy, and it's not administrative. We're not approving any development. We don't have any formal applications to approve a subdivision. This is looking at our regulatory language alone. In your capacity as a planning commission on these types of legislative decisions, your action is a recommendation to the city council. The city council is the legislative body for the city, and they will be the ones to formally adopt or reject this proposal. Okay. When we're looking at this, there's some history here, and I've provided in the staff report. It hasn't really changed from our last discussions as far as the intent, the language, the red lines that we looked at previously are unchanged. So there's nothing new for you to review beyond what we've already reviewed in work session. However, we do have members of the public who are probably new to this proposal. So I'll go into some of these details, some of the history here. And to do so, I'm going to pull up our zoning map so we can have some context to look at. Okay, this text amendment has language that is specific to how we allow development to occur in the residential estate 5-acre zone. So it's the RE5 for short. And the only place in town zoned RE5 is this portion on the Upper East Bench. You can kind of see it delineated here. It is amongst other zoning to the east and the north and the south, which is RE1. So Wildercrest, this area here is all RE1, 1-acre minimum lot size zoning. This section here, residential estate 5-acre, this is all 5-acre minimum lot size zoning. Okay. So the proposal has some text amendments that changes how we classify or how we calculate what is called the base density. Base density is basically how many homes you can have per acre within a specific zoning classification. As it indicated, RE1, 1 unit to the acre, RE5 is 1 per 5 acres. Okay. Now, in our subdivision ordinance, under the density determinant option, there's 3 different options for landowners to subdivide their property. There's one where you just split it up based on the minimum lot size. If you have 10 acres, you split it into 10 1-acre lots, and that's the standard subdivision. The density determinant subdivision option is what we're looking at in this text amendment. It allows for developers to have some flexibility in their lot sizes. And it's basically averaging the lots and the lot widths to make up the minimum standard. So you can have some lots that are smaller than 5 acres, as long as you have a few lots that are larger than 5 acres. As long as the averages even out, then that is acceptable under that subdivision type. The third type is a density bonus type of a subdivision where the developer voluntarily provides open space in exchange for a slight bump in their density. It's a bonus. So they can have a few more lots per acre if they use that method where they dedicate open space to the public for use. Okay. What we're looking at here, there is some history in this RE5 zone. This all used to be RE1 zoning. It was downzoned to RE5 in, I think it was 2020 when that went through. And the city worked with the landowners here. There's 3 different landowners who own the land in this zoning classification. And the city looked at a master planned road that ran along the bench from 2350 East up to, the terminus of Meadowlark Lane right here. I'm going to pull this open here real quick. The master transportation plan is an element of our general plan that indicates where the city anticipates master planned roads. And it indicates what roads the city would participate in funding for these roads to come to fruition. The segment we're looking at is this segment right here. Okay. This is an older copy of the master plan. The city actually removed this segment from the master plan because we realized it was in a challenging area to install a public road that would be operated, maintained in perpetuity by the city, and represented quite a bit of cost, uncertainty, and quite honestly, a bit of a headache for us to take and manage in perpetuity. So this road, as we discussed with the property owners, we knew that this was not a great place to have quite a bit of development. It was a challenging area given the topography, the soils, the geology, a number of things up here. Additionally, as part of the history on this, we had a subdivision proposed back in the early 2000s called the Bonneville Trail subdivision. What we're looking at is, this is that same area we just saw that was zoned RE1, is now zoned RE5. And there was a proposal to put together several lots in this area. A total of 2 phases, 39 lots in the RE1 zone back when it was zoned RE1. The city saw this. It was an approved subdivision. However, during this time period, the real estate crash of 2008, 2009 came along, and the landowner did not record that subdivision plat. So it never did get subdivided, which is probably a good thing. This represents quite a bit of density up there in challenging areas that the city would have been dedicated these roads for ongoing maintenance in perpetuity. So as we looked at this, we said maybe that wasn't a great idea, and we worked with these landowners. There were a couple of individuals who had approached those landowners looking for the ability to build 1-2 houses on all of this acreage, and ultimately the city said, "Hey, this is probably something we shouldn't be doing with all of this density up here." And the landowners agreed. And what ended up happening is we came to a consensus. We'll remove this master planned road, which the developers would have been responsible for the initial cost and installation of the road, which would have been a substantial undertaking and expense. And the developers did not like the idea of having to put that road in as much as the city didn't like the idea of having to maintain it in perpetuity. So an agreement was made. We'll go ahead and reduce the developable potential on the bench. We will remove this master planned road. We will downzone from RE1 to RE5, which was almost an 80% reduction in the developable area or the developable potential of this area. And the understanding being, if we go down to RE5, we'll still be able to get a handful of homes. Not to the extent that we see here, but still a handful of homes. The city was comfortable with that. The developer was, and the landowners were comfortable with that. And we went ahead and made a zoning change. Following that zoning change, the city realized, and the developer, these landowners realized that there was an unintended consequence of doing this downzoning, where in the current subdivision code, under the density determinant option, a landowner is not allowed to use area within the subdivision boundary that is classified as non-buildable in calculating their base density. So what that means, go back to this map here, and we'll use an example just so you guys can understand how these things are calculated. These two parcels, 0004 has an acreage of 28.25 acres. This one up here ending in 97. Oh, let's a sensitive mouse here. Bear with me. It has an acreage of 2.61. So combined, it's a hair over 30 acres. Okay. So 30 divided by 5 acre minimum lot sizes should be 6 lots. Okay. If we're calculating on the gross acreage, the subdivision ordinance right now indicates that we are not allowed to use the non-developable area within the subdivision boundary to count towards that base density. This was unrecognized by the city and the developer when the decision was made to downzone. And so even though, the city had worked with these landowners in good faith and thought we had a mutually understandable outcome, this language as it existed in our code actually prevented us from the outcome that we had intended. So as we recognize this unintended consequence, the city looked at working in good faith with this landowner and finding a way to restore the originally intended property rights back to the landowner without making a drastic zone change back to RE1. Because we already saw with RE1 the potential outcome of a subdivision like this. So we don't want to go back and upzone it. We wanted to keep it RE5, but we had an understanding of how many lots could be there, but at the end of the day, couldn't realize it with application of the code. So what we're proposing to address this issue is to make a change in language of the subdivision ordinance where we would allow for subdivisions in the RE5 zone to utilize the gross acreage for their base density calculation, as opposed to the net, where they would remove the non-buildable area from that calculation. And it's as simple as that. One thing that we need to be careful of here is the language is drafted indicating this exemption is solely for RE5. It is not allowed for any other zoning classification. So anybody in the RE1 zone wanting to use that subdivision method would still be required to use the net calculation in their base density. When you look at the red lines of the ordinance, there's a lot of red lines. And the majority of those red lines is from staff looking through the various ordinances that were applicable, realizing there was a lot of inconsistency. It stepped on its toes left and right. And so I took the opportunity to clean those things up. But in a nutshell, that is the crux of the proposal. We have made some small tweaks to the lot standards, where in the RE5 zone, we've reduced the setback from 50 feet down to 30 feet, meaning we can accommodate a building footprint on a lot in a challenging area a little bit better than if we set back 50 feet. Okay. A couple of things I wanted to run through real quick, just because I know that there's some misconceptions running around. I want to make sure I've put together a quick clarification FAQ document here. Hopefully everybody can read that. And I just want to run through a couple of the common misunderstandings that I've heard from folks who have reached out to me regarding this proposal. So is this proposal a developer-led proposal? The answer is no. Technically, the city is the ones who are wanting to move this forward. We're working in good faith with the landowners who have been affected by this unintended consequence. But we have worked with those landowners. We have worked with a developer who would like to, in the future, potentially develop land in that area. That doesn't necessarily mean that they provided the city with a formal application to make this change. So I hope that's understood. It is a city initiated effort. Another question, do the proposed changes to base density calculation methodology apply to all zoning classifications? No, we've kind of talked about that. The way it's drafted is specific to RE5. We are not allowing for this exemption to be used in any other zoning classification with this proposal. Another question, does this amendment establish precedent that opens the door for new language to be used in other zones? The answer here again is no. The text amendment is a legislative action. With legislative actions, the Planning Commission, City Council have broad deference to determine what policy is best for the community. Any decision you make on this does not entitle anybody else to come to the city and say, you use this language for the RE5 zone. Why don't you use it for me as well? In that instance, we are not bound by this particular amendment. We do not have to grant them the same allowance as we did in the RE5 zone. It's a legislative action. We don't have to follow what we did in other decisions with future decisions. Now, to counter that on an administrative action, this is where precedent is something that can become problematic. For example, if we grant a conditional use permit for a detached accessory dwelling unit for a property owner, and we interpret the language in our ordinances in one way, we would have to use that same interpretation for the applicant of a similar request in the same way. That's a 14th Amendment item. For example, it's the equal protection of laws. If we apply a law to one individual in a particular manner, we need to apply it to everybody in that manner. Okay, so that is where precedent could become a concern. But on this particular item and the type of decision that it is, because it is legislative, we don't have that same concern. Okay. Now the question, does this amendment allow for more aggressive development in the remaining open spaces of North Logan? No, this land in the RE5 zone, every parcel that is zoned RE5 is privately owned. Those private property owners have development rights and property rights that they can realize under our existing zoning and subdivision ordinances, just the same as anybody else who owns private property. They are not obligated to dedicate that as open space to the public. It is not publicly open space now, and it's not required of them to dedicate it as open space either. Okay. Going down. Does the proposed amendment allow for development in non-buildable areas? No. So when we're looking at this particular proposal, we are not saying they can build anything in the non-buildable area. So what happens with development proposals, if a property owner submits a subdivision application to the city, they are required to provide various pieces of information before we even consider approving. Those are soil analysis, geologic analysis, engineering, access. A lot of information is brought before the Planning Commission and City Council to determine what areas within the subdivision are actually developable. Any area that is found to be non-buildable has to remain non-buildable. In this particular proposal, we are just saying that you can have non-buildable area in your yard, but you can still build within the boundaries of your lot in areas that are not deemed non-buildable. Okay. Another question, can a member of the public petition the city to change the city's land use regulations? The answer is yes. Any member of the public can reach out to their elected officials and bring up issues that they see. If, for example, those elected officials agree with a member of the public that there is something problematic in our land use ordinances, and they find that there's good cause and they want to look into changing that ordinance, they certainly can request that staff and the Planning Commission look at our regulations and recommend potential amendments to fix those issues. That is something that any member of the public can do through their elected officials. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean your elected officials will agree with your proposal, but they certainly are there to listen to you. That is their role in local government. Okay, are all legislative actions permanent? No. If, for example, this proposal makes it to the city council thinks it's a good idea, and want to go ahead and adopt this proposal, they certainly can using the legislative powers, but they also can repeal ordinances when and if they believe them to no longer be beneficial. So nothing is permanent in this type of decision. Okay. And then the last thing I didn't put in this document, but I wanted to address real quick is this a zone change? Are we changing the zoning classification through this proposal? And the answer is no, it is staying RE5. We are changing the rules within RE5 that would affect future development proposals in this area, but we are not upzoning, downzoning to RE1 or something larger like an RE10. But it does have the effect of changing how we calculate density, but it is not technically a zone change. Okay. So those are a couple of just clarifying points I wanted to make. Hopefully that answers a few questions that folks may have out there. Before we jump into commissioner comments in the public hearing itself.
Scott?
Clarification.
Yeah.
Are the properties to the right, I'm guessing east and south, are they private properties or are those National Forest properties?
Yeah, those are, you can kind of see by the tax ID number here, 99999. This is federal land
Okay.
to the east there. Yep.
Scott, can I just get clarification in the third paragraph of page 2 of the staff report? On the second line, it talks about development of 7 lots on Jim Luce 28.25 acres.
Yep.
And then a few more paragraphs down, it talks about 6 lots on 30.86 acres. And then in the concept plan, the hidden hollow concept, it shows 7 lots on 37.53 acres.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad to hear you questioning because I recognized this after I had submitted the staff report. Thank you for reading the staff report. You're correct. What we're looking at is there's different parcel acreages, but they're owned by a similar under similar ownership. Like we had talked about, Jim Maloof, for example, owns this piece here. If we can get it to load. One of those parcels is 28.5. Our parcel layer isn't updating here. So there is a parcel under the Jim Maloof ownership, 28.5. There's another one, 2.6, I believe. The total of the sum of the two is 30 point something. That's on me. That's an error that, as I was putting together the staff report, I didn't clarify. The idea here is that there's 3 owners. There's 3 owners amongst various parcels that are zoned RE5, and that action of downzoning from RE1 to RE5 caused for development rights to be stripped from the property more so than wasn't intended. But you're right, the acreage don't match up in the staff report.
okay, so the 7 lots is value, like you say, I was able to at least see the 28 point something with the 2 point something gets us to 30.86. And
Yep.
I could see that 6 lots would fit on that in an RE5 zone.
Yep.
But to get to the 7, I guess, are they pulling in one of the other parcels? I had the parcel view up here too. North Logan open space. Is that the UTCO? Okay.
Okay. We can talk about that here in a minute. I wanted to pull this up. This is a summary of the parcels in the RE5 zone. Kind of zoom in to where it's all contained on the screen a little bit. Okay. These are the parcel ID numbers in the RE5 zone. Here's the ownership. There's 3 owners that are represented, a sum of 73 acres. And I did a little bit of a comparison. This is using gross acreage, so don't assume this is net. But what it basically is showing in our subdivision ordinance, we allow for the rounding to go to the nearest whole number. And if, for example, a number ends on 0.5, it goes up to 1. So if you don't have enough acreage to have 1, it would technically go up to 1. Okay. So looking at the action of down zoning, RE, when it was zoned RE1, this acreage would have allowed for, if we did gross acreage, 74 lots, right, versus 15 going down to the 5-acre. This is just a comparison of the reduction in density that has been done through the zone change. Okay. Going back to Commissioner Reese, remind me the question, the core of the question.
Well, I was just having a hard time seeing the exhibit that you had included, that was the hidden hollow concept with trail.
Yeah. let me
It
open
shows
here.
7 lots. And if you add the acreage up on those 7, it comes up to 37 point something,
Yeah.
530.
So
So it was unclear to me where they were getting the acreage to build 7 lots.
So let's be very clear. This is not a development proposal.
Right. We're not
Okay,
talking about
nobody is
subdivisions
proposing a
tonight,
development
and
right
that's
here.
true.
This is
Yeah.
just an exhibit to help convey, I guess, the idea here. Whether it's 37 acres or 30 acres, the principle holds true of allowing for a gross calculation versus a net calculation.
Yes, good point.
What this, in this example, for conversation's sake, you can see the boundary of the subdivision here. If that equals 37 acres, then that means that they've pulled 37 acres into this boundary, and then wanted to divide that by 5. Now, based on the language that we have here, they would never be able to get 7 lots. At most, they'd be able to get 6. But I want to not confuse this exhibit with the core of the proposal. This is a very hypothetical subdivision that could not be approved as proposed in this drawing. Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on the commission, the history on this, why we're considering the proposed changes themselves? Any details you want to get into?
I think that's a great introduction. So we'll move into our public hearing.
And before we do, I did receive 2 written public comments via email. Those are in your packet there on the dais. Happy to read through those, or if one of the planning commissioners wants to do that for these individuals, you're welcome to do. Let me know what you prefer.
Okay.
Correct.
What's that? Okay. Those are the emails that I think all of us were on.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, well, we are going to open our public hearing. So I'm going to give you some brief instructions. Before you begin, so we'd ask you to come and stand at the microphone. Please state your name for the record. Please speak into the microphone so the comments can be recorded. Please limit your statements to 2 minutes. If you're also speaking on behalf of others, you may ask the chairman for more time. Please phrase your opinions in the form of statements, not questions. A public hearing is your opportunity to express your opinions to the Planning Commission. It is not a time to ask questions and expect dialogue between yourself and the commission or city staff. Please address your comments to the commission, not to the public. The commission might ask questions about your comments in order for them to better understand you. If you have questions or need to discuss an issue, please meet with the Planning Commission members or the appropriate city staff member before the public hearing where a dialogue can take place. Okay. You're up.
Hello, my name is Dennis Newell. I'm a resident of North Logan City. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. I'm a homeowner, a property taxpayer, and I've reviewed the proposed changes, and I agree that, cleaning up the code is a great idea and has led to confusion in the past, obviously. But I'd like to say that I am in opposition to the proposed legislative rule changes to the RE5 zoning, and I have some specific reasons for that. I mean, zoning exists for a reason. I assume that this was changed from RE1 to RE5 in the past through a process very similar to this, with a lot of smart people who thought about it, and that change was made. This has been shared with us that maybe people didn't quite understand that, but that process went through and it was zoned this way for a reason. I look at these changes and I think they're arbitrary and for the sole purpose to maximize development on this land, to be honest. And, not all land can support, high density development, and zoning exists for a reason. It's to protect, the property rights of North Logan City residents. It's to have responsible development and responsible maintenance of our infrastructure. And so that's why zoning exists. And I added a quick thing here because I know this is about the legislative change, but all of these numbers were shared with us, 35 acres, 30, whatever. I did a quick calc here, just for context. If it's 80% non-buildable, that means that if it's 35 acres, there's about, 7 acres available that's actually buildable space. If there's 7 lots, that's 1 acre each. That's the same as RE1. Because those 74 lots doesn't make any sense because most of that is non-buildable anyway, it would never be approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, everyone. I am speaking on behalf of a couple of different people. So I would like to first.
Please state your name.
Yeah, my name is, in this case, Susan Durham. She's given me permission to read her letter that was sent all to you, but was not sent to Scott. She says, "Dear Planning Commissioners, I have read and considered the proposed amendments to the portions of the ordinances 12C and 12D. For the most part, I feel that the proposed modifications achieve the stated intention to add clarity, resolve duplications, and correct inconsistencies. However, I take issue with the proposal to modify how the number of lots is determined in the subdivision by density determinants in RE5 zones by including non-buildable area in the calculation. In addition, subdivisions in RE5 zones do have, quote, roads, etc. And in fact, the subdivision is on steep land, so there actually could be more roadways or a greater length of road, that's my insert, to accommodate slope. The proposed modifications, this is in table 1 in your document, by the way, that removes the 10% allocation, essentially changes the road allocation to 0 by labeling it not applicable. Makes no sense. I ask that you reject both of these proposed exceptions to the RE5 zone. Section 12D 202.2, method 2, density determinant subdivision state. Subdivisions based on density determinants are designed to help protect the city's basic zoning density and also provide some flexibility for lot sizes within a zone. Allowing the number of lots to increase in subdivisions under the density determinant method by including non-buildable area is inconsistent with protecting the basic zoning density. The inclusion of non-buildable area is a de facto rezoning, which lacks transparency and eludes the public input that is a critical element of the rezoning process. The density determinant exceptions for RE5 zones appear to cater to the desires of one landowner and one developer. Tailoring ordinances to individuals rather than the public is poor policy, and I urge you to reject these exceptions." So that's from Susan Durham, who lives in North Logan. I'd also like to speak for myself.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So my name is Alexis Ault, and I am a resident of North Logan, and I am, I'm a homeowner and a taxpayer and a geologist. I really appreciate the city's efforts to address inconsistencies in the North Logan City Code. I know that the developer, Nick Porter, pointed out some of those. And I appreciate and I value that our development and zoning code right now includes provisions that are designed to protect the residents. This includes you of North Logan and preserve the character of this special place. However, tucked into these revisions is this significant change that you all have heard about that Scott mentioned, which is to allow non-buildable area and roads to count in this density determinant method. And including these results, and you've just seen some of that, some of the math, because we didn't see the fact that if it's not included on, say, for example, the 28 or 35 acre parcel of land, you could only have 2 homes results in 7 homes. Okay, so there's a higher density of homes on some of our most sensitive land. And so I want to be transparent. I live adjacent to one of those parcels of land, and I can appreciate the rights of James Maloof, the property owner, to develop that land at RE5. But what's happening now is this sort of weird attempt at rezoning effectively to RE1. I guess Dennis just did that math. And that attempt was made in the past, actually, and was, as you all know, right, not successful. So I was here at the last planning meeting, the last 2 planning meetings. It really hit me that this just isn't about me and my family. It's about the residents of North Logan. It's about all of you. Okay. And the proposed changes, these extend, as you've seen, to these other parcels of land that are behind your property, for example. And so this has ramifications beyond land that's just next to me. And so I have been going door to door. I see that you've gotten a hold of my, hey, thanks. That's my 2 minutes are up, but I'm going to keep talking. You've gotten a hold of a document that I've circulated. And I would just have to say that some of the things in there are slightly, when I use the term open space, what I meant was undeveloped land that is developable, not open space in the sense of like North Logan owned open space, but yes. But every single person that I talked to, okay, they opposed this. And some of the things that they opposed it based on, I hadn't even considered. Okay, so this is because this overdevelopment of RE5 land has significant short-term and long-term costs, not only to all of us as residents, but also to the land itself. And this plays out in terms of infrastructure maintenance, and this is borne out by the taxpayers. And so I have realized through all this process of learning about our code and everything that our laws are there for a reason, and they're designed to help protect all of us and the land, and to maintain the character of North Logan and the RE5 plan. So while I can understand and appreciate the rights of the landowner, and I fully expect that they could develop at RE5, I am asking you to reject this language, this specific language that is exclusion of roads and non-buildable space, and put the well-being of North Logan residents first. So thanks.
Thanks, Alexis.
Hello, my name is Clint Farmer, and I've been a North Logan resident for about 9 months. Been a great 9 months.
Cool.
I appreciate the city for doing a great job with roads. It's been amazing. And I was a recipient of, free sandbags last week. So thank you for that as well. It's a great. We chose a piece of land, actually, we purchased our land from the Collar Woods, and I think it butts up next to this corner of this development. And we purchased it because we saw the value in the space between us, the ability to have, the animals migrating in and through there, and understanding like there'd be limited development. We're not anti-development at all. But this decision could, push a bunch of homes up into a small area that would affect, privacy and some of the things that some of the reasons we purchased that home, some of the reasons we got up there. And I hope that the master plan for roads and those things, and considering all those things. So anyway, we would like to kind of oppose the restrictions, and in the same breath say thank you for doing a great job.
Thanks, Clint. Anyone else like to make comments before you get to hear from me? Oh. Yeah, I'm okay with Scott reading them.
Yeah, thank you for the reminder. So we did receive Susan Durham's
Yeah.
email. So thank you for reading that into the record. We also received an email from James Evans via email, and I'm happy to read that as well. Greetings to members of the North Logan Planning Commission from Jim Evans, North Logan resident, professional geologist in Utah and Wyoming. Many thanks for your service to North Logan. I won't be able to attend this evening's meetings, but I want to briefly comment on the proposal to modify how the number of lots is determined in subdivision by density determinants in RE5 zones by including non-buildable area in the calculation. The utility of RE5 zoning includes enabling some limited development to occur in areas that have infrastructure and or geologic challenges. The current proposal that aims to rezone a specific site by rewording an entire part of the zoning code seems very unwise regarding issues of water supply, street construction and maintenance, and geologic issues, including slope stability, fault hazards, runoff, and stormwater control. These issues can be dealt with, but the complexity, costs, and long-term issues increase significantly as the number of housing lots increase. North Logan already has significant issues with water delivery to high elevation homes, which jeopardizes health and fire safety. People in Hyde Park and North Logan have had to install retaining walls in areas with slope angles of only a few degrees. North Logan has struggled with stormwater management in current subdivisions where streets and drainage developed in the 1980s struggle to handle increased flows due in part to higher elevation development. Road and stormwater management due to overdevelopment in RE5 areas will add a significant short-term and long-term cost to North Logan City in terms of construction and maintenance. RE5 zone enables some development typically by people who have the resources to deal with these issues. Increasing the number of lots by downzoning will increase the exposure of hazards and inevitably add costs to all citizens in the long term. The specific parcel has a significant exposure to these risks, and a rewording of the entire zoning code will expose many people and developers to a wide range of risks that the RE5 zone helps to reduce. Many thanks for considering these comments, Jim Evans. The opinions here represent my personal perspectives and do not reflect those of USU or any of its units.
Okay. One last call. Okay, we will end the public hearing.
I did not receive an email from a Chris Mon.
Just for a change up.
We'll let you.
We have
We'll let
permission
you.
to read Chris Mons's letter. So I am Chris Mons, and dear North Logan Planning Commission, I would like to respectfully express my strong opposition to the exceptions being proposed for the RE5 zone under consideration at tonight's meeting. Allowing this exception would appear to set a precedent on other zoning decisions in North Logan, and allowing such changes would continue to place added strain on an already overburdened infrastructure such as water and roads. Moreover, the proposed location of this change is even more problematic: exceptionally steep land requiring costly terrain modifications and new infrastructure that will likely be problematic to maintain. There is quite honestly enough development in North Logan right now, and as a resident, have to continuously deal with construction noise, traffic, and dramatic changes to the landscape, myself and my family included. Lastly, I have heard through discussions with neighbors that the proposed development of this property, Mr. Nick Porter, has suggested that somehow the landowner, Dr. James Maloof, was somehow wronged in previous zoning decisions on the property. I know Dr. Maloof, and as an orthopedic surgeon and business person, I'm sure he knew exactly the situation with this land as zoned. The proposed change appears to be catering to the wishes of said developer without full consideration of the implications and the concerns of adjacent neighbors and North Logan City in general. Respectfully, Chris Mons.
Thank you.
We
Okay,
did,
with that, we're gonna.
we did also get one more email that I don't know if it has been addressed.
Just one item of clarification, if they weren't received by noon today by Scott, it probably shouldn't be.
It looks like it was sent by Lisa Campbell on March 15th, yesterday at 8:13 a.m.
Do you have a recipient list? I didn't receive an email from Miss Campbell.
Oh. It looks like you may not be on this, Scott. Do you want me to just read this right now?
I'll let Scott tell me the rules.
Yeah, I don't know if
I read it, so.
Yeah,
It sounds
I
like
did
it went
too.
to the planning commission. Did everybody
Yeah.
on the commission receive that?
looks like it did go to all of us. It just says she would be unable to attend this, and so she's writing.
I don't think there's any harm in reading a public comment.
That's fine. Take it away.
Okay.
It's yours.
So, dear members of the North Logan City Planning Commission and City Council, I am unable to attend the public hearing this Thursday, March 16th, 2023. So I am writing to voice my strong opposition to propose changes to the North Logan Development and Zoning Code. In particular, I'm opposed to the text changes that allow non-buildable areas and roads to count in the density determinant method for subdividing land in RE5. These and other proposed changes allow for more dense and aggressive development in some of North Logan's most challenging land to build. Our current laws are in place to protect North Logan residents and to protect our land. I'm asking you not to change them. In addition, these changes are being initiated by a developer, and I am asking that you put the residents and land of North Logan City first. Thank you, Lisa Campbell, North Logan and Canyon Ridge Estates resident. Yep,
Can we have both of those emails forwarded over?
I will forward them right now. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to close the public hearing. So I'm going to remind the planning commission, what's it before us is the text amendment change in the language, specifically for the RE5 zoning. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the commission to discuss.
I'll start with a question. I know in the staff report, it talks about the unintended consequences of the down zone to RE5 being contrary to the intent of the planning commission and the city staff at that time. So that precedes my time on the commission, precedes
So-
your time here.
It does.
So how do we know what the intent of the commission and the staff?
So I was in the meeting when
you-
we
yeah, you were
discovered
there.
the unintended consequence. And I also talked to previous city council members about what went on during this.
City staff, myself included, did have conversations with those who were present in that time period to confirm, the historical context here and what the intention was. Jeff obviously was there in that time period and can speak to that, but I believe the intent in the staff report conveys the city's desire to work in good faith here.
So you were on the commission when it got down zoned from RE1 to RE5?
No,
Okay.
but I was in a workshop meeting when we were looking at solutions and what do we do when we denied the rezone a year and a half ago. And the outcome of that was further discussion on what are the options, what do we need to do? And at that point, as we were digging in, and one of the city council members digging into the code, is when we really discovered this restriction with the non-buildable area. And at that point, I wasn't aware that anyone was aware of that until that was brought to light. The intention in talking to city council members that were involved when this did happen, the intention at that time was to be able to put 6 or 7 building lots, in that particular development. And so, that's as it was proposed and the subdivision came before us. I don't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere in that neighborhood that, we ultimately denied during that time for a number of reasons. But it was at that time, when we found that. And since then, I've always been troubled with that. And so if you want me to give my 2 cents of kind of where, as I've been through this, I was in several meetings, public meetings for rezones, workshops in trying to, what can be done? How do we navigate this? This is complex. And I'm separating the concerns because I share the concerns that many were shared tonight. Many have been shared in the past that have to do with the subdivision specifically. And I have separated that from my views of what happened when I do believe that the city and a landowner in good faith were trying to do what they felt was best for the situation. There were positive things that came from that down zone. There were positive things for the city. and for the residents of the city by doing that. And everyone worked in good faith. I believe. Now, I wasn't involved in those relationships, but at the time, but have been involved with discussions, since then. I do believe that there was efforts that were made to try and make a win-win-win with the situation and there that was given. And it was only years later where we discovered that the intention there wasn't going to be able to be made. Where I've struggled with this personally is that I feel like it's the game of gotcha. And because we downzoned and we eliminate this ability to have 75 homes, well, now we're saying, oh, well, because of this, that personally the commission, council and landowners didn't know the consequence, that we've got you now. And now here's a huge stumbling block to prevent any development. And I'm personally troubled with that. Now, do I love the idea of subdivisions up on the hillside? I struggle with it. The water infrastructure, emergency services, our snowplow drivers. There's significant things that and I've shared those publicly when we've talked about this subdivision. There's a lot of things. Water's huge, that I personally have issues with. Fixing this for me is about the good faith and trying to get back to what everyone's intent was at the time. All of those other things are still huge mountains that we've got to climb, and get past to be comfortable with that. And so that's really kind of my sense, where I came in is, those things were kind of learned, and understanding the history, the historical context as I've been through it. So.
I think
Teresa.
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead, Teresa. Sorry.
I just have a question, and it's probably in here, but so when these landowners purchased that land, it was RE1?
That's correct. So yeah, the zoning as recent, I believe, is 2020 was RE1.
So when all this land was purchased, it was purchased as RE1.
It's been RE1 for a long time. I don't know.
What is clear is those owners did have that zoning at the time that the zoning was changed. So it must have been that zoning when they purchased. They had that property right under their belt, so to speak, in their bundle of property rights. But the zoning change then changed it. So yeah, regardless of if it was back then, I think it's understood that they had that zone at a given point.
Yeah, but sorry, did you have other comments? So essentially, we're not rezoning it back to RE1, but if only 7 acres of that 30 acres is developable, essentially we are kind of moving that back to RE1, because you would have 7 lots on 7 developable acres.
Yeah, let me show you. Luckily, we have an example where this was actually engineered. This was, the proposal that did not get recorded. You can see that they were able to engineer a way to put 39 homes along the bench. Some of this is still RE1. This over here is RE1. All this is RE5 right down here now. So based on an engineer's analysis of this area, they were able to find a way to squeeze in building footprints for homes. I'm going to zoom in here just to show you what that looks like. The area here that is kind of has a texture to it. This is all determined to be unbuildable, right? It's all in the lot that's part of their backyard, but they then put an actual building pad where they could fit a buildable area. So even back then with the RE1 zone, they're still not allowed to build in the non-buildable area. We're just counting that area towards their base density calculation. So if we were to rezone them to RE1, someone could theoretically bring this same plan back and say, here's a way that we were able to engineer around some of these constraints. Whether we look at this in the same light now as we did back then, I don't know, but they were able to put 39 lots in this area. This southern phase 2, they were able to squeeze in 13. So essentially, if we are able to put 6, that's still half the density that was designed under the RE1 zone. So it's still a reduction from what could have been back in the day. So we still don't want to go back to RE1. RE5 is still the better option, but it's still less than if we were to go back to RE1.
So in that case, they were using the non-buildable land as.
They were, see all of this up on the hillside?
Yeah,
This is still in the subdivision boundary.
It's not buildable.
It is
Yeah.
basically open space. It's non-buildable. It's part of the density calculation as a whole. But
you said it is or is not part of the density calculation.
it would not have been part of that
Okay.
density
All right.
calculation.
Okay.
Yeah.
About every single subdivision up on the bench unintentionally used the non-livable areas in their bonus density count. So from Little Crest all the way up to Mahogany Ridge, they all use that.
Even though that violated the code.
Hopefully I'm seeing during that line, but that was what the staff, the council planning commission, that none of us were aware of.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
But that aside, just about every subdivision on the bench used non-buildable.
The gross instead of, okay.
May I ask a question that is, Scott, are there areas in these 7 lots which are prone to flooding and drainage and that kind of thing, which would be a problem for someone building on those?
Let's be clear, this isn't a development proposal. We're
Yeah.
not considering any lots being subdivided, but there are areas in the RE5 zone that have drainage channels, that have geologically sensitive areas, soil concerns. All of those concerns will have to be brought back to the city prior to any subdivision utilizing this language if it were to be approved. So I want to be clear, what we are doing here is we are changing the code that determines density. We are not alleviating any future development from all the rest of the requirements of any subdivision that has to bring engineered studies to us to show us where is safe to build. Everybody has to submit a geological report, a soils report. They have to show how they can put a road in at adequate grades. All those things are determined at the subdivision review and approval process. We are not, this code change does not change those requirements for a future development. What we're basically saying is we are reestablishing those property rights that were intended to be kept there, but you've only halfway established those rights. You can't actually capitalize on those rights unless you can find a way to design around all of those engineering concerns before they can actually truly come to fruition. And they may not be able to.
I think I totally agree with all that. I guess my only thought is what we're talking about today is a legislative action.
Mhm.
Everything thereafter is administrative actions.
Correct.
So it's worth at least, we have very little latitude on the administrative actions.
If they can show through design of a proposed subdivision that they meet those established requirements, then we would have to approve them.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Well, Kenny, where you at?
This is a tough one. For me, my mind keeps coming back to the intent. I do think that we should, if the intent of the commission and the city council and the city staff at the time of the down zone was really that you could still put 6 or 7 lots on there, then I think we should honor that intent. It's just difficult to know. I guess we do have some, you have data on that. So I guess that's where my mind's going right now. But it's tough.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not firmly in that camp yet, but that's where my mind's going.
Yeah. All right, Teresa, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are kind of the same as the intent. And obviously, these landowners agreed with the down zone, the way they understood it, that they would be able to put 6 or 7 houses. And I guess I struggled to say that that can't be possible because of the intent.
Okay. Aaron, where are you at?
I think we're all about the same thing. It's it's a difficult thing for me because of the changes that have been made in the codes and in the building permits. But I'm in line to say that I would rather have fewer lots than those 178 or whatever was going to be in the R1 zone. I understand that the geology may prohibit even the 7 from being
Mhm.
built.
Mhm.
But I guess engineering, you can mitigate that also. But the intent of the previous commission and city leaders were to those landowners when they bought that property that they could build on that. So that's
Okay.
where I am.
All right, Teresa.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, as a person who has built on a difficult situation and everything we had to go through and all the changes we had to make, it was a lot. You know, with the engineering, with everything. And I kind of think if it can be built, we're not assured we're not, even though we're not talking about a subdivision, but I think we need to remember that just because if we do approve this text, just because that happens, doesn't mean there will be 7 houses. That's how I look at it, because each one has got to go through the process, and it's a big process to make sure everything's covered.
Okay. Are we at a point for a motion?
You look like you were gonna say something, Scott.
I just wanted to make sure everybody understands, there's no guarantee of what the outcome would be. You know, there are some very good engineers out there that find a way to mitigate against any identified hazards that could be, you know, present on this area. So the intent of the code here would be to allow anybody in the RE5 zone to calculate their base density based on the gross. So that takes out the roads, it takes out the non-buildable area. And I think that we just need to make our decision based on the fact that there could be, you know, that many homes out there. Which could happen, but it's hard to know until, you know, real pen gets put to paper through, you know, various studies and engineering to show how it could be feasible. It might not be, but any developer, any landowner can utilize the full extent of the language once it's changed.
Is there any possibility that other parcels would get rezoned to RE5 within North Logan city boundaries at any point in time?
Somebody could ask for it, but they would have to, so planning commission, city council would have to look to see why would we do that? Understand the language that governs that zone. You would understand that if we rezone property to RE5, they would be able to calculate their density as this code, if it is adopted as it's drafted. And we'd have to make a decision. Do we rezone these folks to RE5 knowing that they can use the gross and not the net? So never say never, but it's probably unlikely.
Yeah.
Another question, Scott. Are the infrastructure things that need to be put in there? Are the staff in line with having those go in? Is there a possibility that they can't put those in there, or is it?
We have no idea, Aaron.
Is
We
that,
don't know.
do we know anything about
don't.
those?
Until somebody formally requests through an application to develop the land, they would have to show to us how the infrastructure could be feasible. We just don't know. You know, it's up to an owner, a developer to show us how it can meet our standards. Yeah, so that would come later, potentially.
All right.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
All right. I don't know how to state this, but for this public hearing on the ZTA 2020-204, city initiated zoning text changes. And according to the rest of that proposal modifications and so forth, the standards, I move that we accept those and send them on to the city.
Make a positive recommendation.
Okay, and I positively recommend that we send those on to the cities as
Proposed.
proposed.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Teresa seconds. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. On to city council. Okay, let's commission work session. ZTA 2023-02. Work session discussion regarding city's current subdivision access requirements and potential updates to facilitate interconnectivity.
Okay, we'll give a minute for the room to clear out.
Hang on, Scott.
They're gonna let them leave.
What's that?
They're gonna let them leave.
Okay.
Grab your contact information here.
It's just hard to know.
Okay.
Yeah, did we have a choice?
Everybody knows this.
And this is 3100.
And I've always felt like, say, gotcha, really, none of us intended to. For a year, it's the all.
Yeah, it might be that we just need to, might just need to enforce our.
So,
You know,
both parties came together to see. They thought they were in a better place. And yeah. They were worse situation. And for me to say, look, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And we denied the rezone. I mean, do not think you should only subdivision. For this, because
Well, that's what we
Yeah.
not, and so.
What I'll
wonder
do,
if also
we
it's up there.
still have a few items on our agenda tonight, so we're gonna keep going down the agenda.
Because it's not.
I will
we're
give
not
you a
playing
call.
definitions. We're now, now we're saying, show me the engineering, show me the water, show me the infrastructure. Well, those are all the things.
This is the R1.
Well, my
This is
understanding, maybe.
that subdivision that we're showing on screen.
Okay, where
They agreed
is
to
this
down-
water tank?
There's one here, there's one here.
So this is my house.
So they weren't doing it just out of the goodness.
So you're looking at a lot of public with respect to that.
Yeah, this.
It's troubling.
How much is that?
But this has been.
Connect, so
Yeah.
I'm reading.
The guy.
What's that?
And I reckon.
Reduce it down to 7 or. I don't know how they could ever do that. Yeah. Like I drove up there, there's no way you could build on most of that
The
land.
challenge is, and now all the concerns that we all really have, now that's where that becomes, this just makes right the wrong. and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
We all.
Let him go through the process.
Yeah, well, and that's,
And I think sometimes people don't,
Remind me of your name. Buzzy, that's right.
people like live in this space, for that engineer is protecting those people down.
So the only issue I have, I'm an engineer, I'm an electrical engineer, so I don't do any of this, that civil stuff, but I can tell you, you can find an engineer that will approve anything. So to say that, well, that's okay, we'll let them go through engineering now, I don't totally buy off on that, because
well, but.
you will find an engineer that can approve it.
But it comes back to.
As an administrative action, though, at that point.
But it's gotta be, but then we have a code problem. That, by you saying that, you're indicating that I control the process. It should be administrative, where we have problems with.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where, I mean, and if we follow your code, it's pretty, it's pretty strange. It's just when we don't follow it, we don't know.
Yeah.
But when we have. Like, we have engineers in the city also.
There's
You know, but
several.
they have that they're- you know,
Okay,
this was local.
Are you guys ready?
yeah.
Yeah,
Good break.
Talk loud, Scott,
Okay,
and slow.
I always feel like I'm shouting when I talk loud on these things, but
Yeah, you're not, because I can barely hear you. My hearing aids are all the way up, so.
good to know. Okay. So this work session is a continuation of our discussion we had regarding connectivity and how do we improve our connectivity between subdivisions, future subdivisions, inner block areas that are hard to make through streets and coordinate with landowners to make sure we have good interconnectivity. I don't have a lot for us to review today, but I did want to provide an update that we did have a discussion internally with the fire marshal, the city engineer, public works director, administrator, planner. And we read the proposed language top to bottom. Who has concerns? Is this acceptable? Mainly, I wanted to make sure the fire marshal was on board with what we were proposing, and he was happy to see what we were doing. He didn't have any concerns based on how the code was written to allow for the continuation of non-terminal streets, master plan streets that are dead ends terminal or temporarily, but were planned to connect through. And so what we'll be doing this, probably the next planning commission in April, we'll have a formal staff report proposal for you guys to review in a public hearing setting. I will be making some updates to that language to be a little bit more detailed, just adding a little bit more so we don't have misconceptions, or make sure we have defined terms. That will be something that we add a little bit more clarity to. But the crux of the proposal, as we had discussed last meeting, will be the same. There wasn't any substantial changes based on our internal conversation with the fire marshal, city engineer, which is good, because I think at the end of the day, those technical eyeballs were who I really wanted to make sure understood the intention behind the language, any unforeseen issues. But I wanted to give you that update. Okay. I don't have anything in particular to go through. We have it on the agenda just to keep it front and center, but that was an update I wanted to give. We'll look at that in a public hearing in April. Okay. And as you guys may know, April, we only have one meeting, and it's mid-month. It's not the first or the third Thursday. April is an interesting month. We've got different conferences going on with city staffers that kind of prohibit us from having our traditional city council planning commission meetings on the 1st and 3rd. So in April, we will be looking at this again in a little bit more detail on the 13th. So just FYI.
So no meeting on the 6th or the 20th.
Not the 6th or the 20th, only one meeting mid-month on the 13th. Yep.
So will at that meeting? So at that meeting, will we be talking about the appeal then too?
Yep. Yeah, we will likely in between now and then, city staffers will be working with legal counsel to understand what we need to do as a land use authority, both city council and planning commission, when they're acting as the land use authority, how we make our decisions with findings of fact, conditions or conclusions of law, to make sure that those are adequately documented. So if it goes to an appeal authority, that they have sufficient information to go off of. So we'll get into the weeds on that, and then we'll bring that back to the planning commission. Okay. So yeah, quick work session. Just wanted to provide that update mostly.
Sweet. That's my kind of work session. Okay. Let's move on to staff business and discussion.
Okay, a couple of things on the radar. The legislature wrapped up their session for 2023. There's a couple of bills out there that are pretty substantially impacting to local municipalities and how we review land use applications. Specifically, Senate Bill 174 and House Bill 406. They basically are changing how we are to review and approve subdivision applications, and it makes it challenging. So there's actually a lot of training coming up. Usually when the session ends, there's various groups throughout the state that provide training on what municipalities need to do to become compliant. How does it impact us? And then we'll be looking at our own code to say, what do we need to change to come into alignment with the state requirements? And it might be impactful to us. It'll be a little bit more of an expedited approach is what the legislature had intended. So we want to make sure we catch things before it gets to us, but at the same time, we don't want to let things slip through the cracks.
Is there a date for when that starts, or did it start with the signature? of the
No, it starts
governor?
next month, or sorry, next year. So 2024.
So
is
you
when
have
that
time, we have
language
time
comes
to
into-
figure it out.
Yep. So we have some time, but not a lot. That time goes by quickly. So I still need to wrap my head around all of the impacts that it causes, and then what we would need to do in our code in order to comply. But I wanted to put that out there on everybody's radar. We're going to have more text amendments to bring us into alignment with the state requirements. Another item, I don't know if you guys are aware, there's a an effort. It's called the Trails Cache. They're putting together a cache bikeways network. It's a regional collaboration between municipalities to stripe bike lanes and active transportation on our existing roads. So within the next couple of months, we're going to be meeting with regional representatives to identify the routes and striping of bike lanes. And their hope is to put paint on the road by fall of 23. So it's kind of an interesting thing, fast. We'll see if they get it done or not. It's kind of, I thought it was interesting that they needed to put it in that quick because it'll just get scraped off with the snow plows. But
On every road over,
not every road. No, there's a plan and there are different kind of routes that will be identified, regional connections. So. And they'll
Makes
connect
sense.
into our neighboring jurisdictions and carry on regionally.
not 25th North though, huh?
No,
I guess because it's not. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
there's a wide shoulder there, but they're not going to stripe it with a bike emblem.
No, we've already striped that one. Including the additional road. We haven't.
This is the first I've heard of it. Apparently, this has been an ongoing effort for a while, but I just want to let you know, it kind of impacts us a little bit. I mentioned this at the last meeting, the Utah Growing Water Smart Workshop is being held June 6th, 7th, and 8th here at Utah State. We actually went ahead and put our application in before the deadline on the 17th. Commissioner Isaacson and Tyre had said they were available, so I put your names down. If you're able to make it, great. We do have a pretty robust team, so if something comes up, you're not able to attend, it's probably not the end of the world, but we'd love to have you, just FYI. Okay. And then lastly, Commissioner Coleman is resigning from the Planning Commission. He's going to be spending some more time doing some coaching, sounds like, and we just wanted to appreciate him for his time and his effort on the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
I wasn't able to sway you off of that decision, huh?
You tried though.
I did try.
So we'll parade him in front of the city council, probably next month sometime. But thank you. Appreciate your time and your efforts for the
Yeah,
Planning
yeah.
Commission.
I'm a quitter.
That's it as far as staff business.
It depends on. you.
Okay, well, let's adjourn this bad boy.
I still move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I